I've noticed lately that some people get overboard with film theories. There's films out there like Cronenberg or Fincher films that are really open to interpretation and don't really seem to mean anything and are sort of a film for you to make your own conclusions about. And then there's films that are very, very heavily steeped in symbolism and metaphor, but people just don't get them, and film theorists go absolutely overboard with them. One I may talk about in the future, which is pretty easy to break down, would be Nocturnal Animals. But I want to break down a different Jake Gyllenhaal flick for you guys, one that's tripped up zillions of film theorists. A film that is heavily steeped in symbolism and metaphor, but actually means something concrete that I'm going to explain to you. Now, Denis Villeneuve's masterpiece, underrated as hell, Enemies, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, who's one of the best actors out there. So many film theorists have put weird-ass ideas into this film. Stuff like it's The Matrix, or some sort of symbolism about aliens. Symbolism of a totalitarian state, or a Big Brother state, or the experiences of prisoners of war, or something. It's very, very strange theories. I'll tell you exactly, in as short amount of time as I possibly can, what Enemy is about. In order to do this, I have to spoil the fuck out of the film. If you haven't seen Enemy, stop the video now, watch it. Okay? So, an Enemy is the story of Jake Gyllenhaal in sort of a marriage on the rocks, who sees a film where he sees somebody who looks exactly like him, somebody who could be his twin or his doppelganger, and seeks out the other the other Jake Gyllenhaal, and they end up having this confrontation, and the other Jake Gyllenhaal turns out to be a really bad guy who tries to take over the original Jake Gyllenhaal's life. Now, the first thing you need to realize is that there are not two Jake Gyllenhaals. There's only one. If you know that, you're halfway to figuring this movie out. There's not two of them, there's only one. Then there's two other majorly important things in this movie. The one that everybody seems to have figured out is symbolism, would be the giant fucking spider that seems to keep showing up. The one that trips everybody up, and everybody misinterprets the spider. But there's something very important that's a symbol in that movie that nobody gets, and that's the key. Okay, there's a key in this film. So we're going to start with the key. You see, Jake Gyllenhaal takes this key, leaves his home, leaves his wife, and goes to this underground, weird sex dungeon. And he uses the key to get in, and then that's where you also first see the spider, represented as a large tarantula, but otherwise seemingly normal looking. And you see a woman take her heel and step on the spider, and that's a form of porn. It's like crush porn, but that's symbolism. You see, what you need to understand, two things. The key is Jake Gyllenhaal's dick. Yes, Freudian symbolism 101. And the spider is his sexual immorality, his unfaithfulness to his wife, his sexual deviancy and infidelity. Okay? That's what the spider is. And when you first see the spider, Jake Gyllenhaal doesn't notice the spider. He notices the hooker stepping on it, because the hooker is the same thing. See, Jake Gyllenhaal is a man who cheats on his wife, and he's bad to her. Now, the first Jake Gyllenhaal you see is one half of his psyche. The first Jake Gyllenhaal is sort of mousy, non-confrontational. He cares about his wife very much, but doesn't really know how to communicate with her. Seems to be more or less a nice guy, but emotionally frail. Now, when we finally, kind of far into the movie, meet the other Jake Gyllenhaal, he's mean, adventurous, he's got a fucking motorcycle, he's aggressive and brash, and even violent. That's the dark side of Jake Gyllenhaal. And that's the Jake Gyllenhaal who goes out whoring and cheats on his wife and lies to her. Now, as the film goes on, you're starting to see that the confrontation between the two Jake Gyllenhaals is symbolism. And keep in mind that basically this movie doesn't happen in real life. It's a representation of an internal struggle inside a man's head. And very little, if any, of the movie actually takes place in the real world. Okay? It's all symbolism. So, as they begin to fight, you notice that evil Jake Gyllenhaal covets good Jake Gyllenhaal's wife. And because the thing is, good Jake Gyllenhaal loves his wife. Evil Jake Gyllenhaal wants to cheat on his wife, but he still wants to fuck her. He still wants to possess and own her because he's jealous and envious and greedy, as well as a sexual deviant, right? And mean. So, as the film goes on and these two Jake Gyllenhaals clash and interact more and more, and you'll notice when the bad Jake Gyllenhaal first meets the good Jake Gyllenhaal, he's like, what the fuck? Who the fuck are you? Get the fuck away from me. Don't interfere with my shit. Because evil people are possessive and don't want to fucking have their plans fucked with. You know, and it's very much the behavior of a drug addict. Don't fucking touch my drugs. Don't tell me what to do. Fuck you. I'm gonna do my thing. It's exactly like that. So, and you'll even see the key show up in other parts of the film where it appears to be that other husbands emulate evil Jake Gyllenhaal and want to go whoring with him, essentially, because you'll see them ask for the key. And it's basically him spreading that bad behavior to other men. But what about the spider? Well, you'll see as at one point when he returns to the sex dungeon, you see the spider, there's a hooker or a stripper with the head of the spider walking by, and everybody's like, what the fuck is that? You don't ever see the spider like that. Well, the thing is, the hooker and the spider are one and the same. They're his sexual infidelity, his deviancy, him cheating on his wife. That's the spider and the hooker. They're one and the same. And as his panic grows about making this decision and worrying about his wife finding out what he's doing, there's even a scene where he sees the spider and is afraid of it, and it's a big fuck spider at this point. It's like takes up the whole hallway, and it's like, oh, holy shit. And as the film progresses towards the end, where he's going to have a violent confrontation with his evil self, you see the fucking spider looming as like a Godzilla-like, almost like a giant squid, fucking thousands of feet looming over the city. That's because the problem has gone from something that a hooker can step on to something that could end his entire world. It's symbolism. It's really that simple. Now, what I want to break down to you is the last two scenes, because these are what the whole thing comes together. All right, we'll try to tie this up nice and neat and quick in a nice little bow. So there's a confrontation, a violent confrontation between the good and bad Jake Gyllenhaal. And it ends in a car wreck. And again, more symbolism. The camera pans out through the windshield, which you see has cracked into a spider web. So when Jake Gyllenhaal returns home, we find out pretty quick that it's mean Jake Gyllenhaal that has returned home. So we think, oh shit, he's going to take over good Jake Gyllenhaal's life. Well, they're the same person. So what happened was he made the decision to be bad. And he has the key. And the scene that trips everybody out, I'm going to explain to you concrete. Ready? So he talks to his wife and is pretending to be good Jake Gyllenhaal, even though he's clearly evil Jake Gyllenhaal. And she's in the den, the living room. And you can hear on the radio they're talking about a car crash that happened and there was a single fatality. Okay, which means that good Jake Gyllenhaal has died. Although you hear his wife's not paying any attention to it, and really it's because that radio thing's not happening. It's a signal to you, to the viewer, that the conflict has ended and one Jake Gyllenhaal has emerged victorious, which happens to be the evil one. So he goes to the bathroom and he's still talking to his wife. And when he comes back, this is the scene that flipped everybody out. It jump scared everybody, but then nobody understood the last 10 seconds of the film. As he comes back into the den, you see him come back around the corner, and it's not his wife there. It's the spider, the big 10-foot tall, fuck-off giant tarantula. But here's the weird thing. You hear this loud noise that makes everybody jump along with the side of the giant spider, which is it's like a noise. And the thing is, if you listen closely, that stinger, that noise that scares you, is the sound of a woman gasping, his wife. And you see the spider not threaten him, not stare at him. The spider, in fact, backs up and shields itself. And you can see the spider's wide eyes of fear, and it's shielding itself. It's hiding. Tarantulas that react in fear do that. They back up and shield their belly. And then the camera cuts to Jake Gyllenhaal, and is his reaction fear, terror, confusion, shock, anything? You just see this. Why? Because the spider is his wife. He has decided to treat his wife the same way that he's treated the hookers and all that. He no longer loves his wife. He views her as the same sexual vice that he views all the women he cheats on her with. He has completely devalued her and rendered her into nothing more than another one of his bad behaviors. And that last scene of the spider recoiling in fear and his dismayed, resigned face is he knows that she knows that he knows that she knows that he's a bad guy and that he fucked up. The end. Thanks for watching, everybody. That's the ending in the entire story of Enemy. Anybody who tells you different, probably fucking wrong. I've read a few film theories. They're all ridiculous. That is clearly, absolutely clearly, the intention of the director and the writer. I mean, there's no fucking way it's any other way. So you tell me what you think. Thanks for watching.